Coordinator Sir, respected all faculty members and dear students. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming all of you in today's online students webinar organized by the Department of Botany, Narosingho Datta College. Here, the students of the department will try to share their visions on different topics related to their syllabus in this webinar. I am sure that we will feel enriched with some knowledge after completion of this event. Now I request our respected Principal Madam, Dr. Shoma Bandopadhyay, to share her valuable thought with us. Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, congratulations to Department of Botany for arranging this kind of webinar, and many thanks and my blessings to my beloved students who have prepared themselves to deliver their ideas in this kind of platform, virtual platform. Now we are almost acquainted with this virtual platform because for a lot of time, for a couple of months, we are locked in our home and we have to maintain all the things, all the functionalities of our academic life in this virtual platform. So I'm sure that this seminar will be a very much attractive one, and our students will do their best, and other students will also be enriched and will learn how to deliver lecture and how to carry on studies in future. Many thanks again to the department, and I hope that the program will be a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your encouragement, especially for the students and on behalf of the department. I have to mention that our IQAC coordinator, sir, Dr. Kuntol Chattopadhyay, he informed that he could not be present here right now due to some important classes, and hope he will be join us when it is convenient. And so when it will be over, he will be with us. So now I request our students to be ready. And in this session, we have 4 presenters. If there is any question for them after their presentation, audience is requested to post the questions in the in-call message or the text box or chat box. And now I invite the first speaker, Ms. Rumeli Chongdar, students of 6th semester Botany Honors, to deliver her lecture. Thank you. Welcome, Rumeli.
Yes, ma'am. I hope my slides are visible entirely.
Yes, it's visible.
So, good afternoon, everyone, our respected principal ma'am, to all my respected teachers and fellows present here. This is Rumeli from 6th semester Botany department. So, today my topic of discussion is plant tissue culture, its techniques and its application. So, plant tissue culture is not a separate branch of botany like taxonomy, cytology, plant physiology, etc. Rather, we can say it is a collection of experimental methods of growing a large number of isolated cells or tissues under sterile conditions. So, the cells or the tissues are generally obtained from plant part like stem, root, leaf, etc., which are encouraged to produce more cell in the culture and to express their totipotency. So to carry out a successful experiment using this tissue culture techniques, a well-equipped laboratory is very much required, and some factors should be maintained, like the nutrients present in the growth media, the environmental factor, the explant source. These are maintained thoroughly. Now, there are some general steps that to be followed during callus formation, and from that regeneration of plant part will occur. Suppose the plant is tobacco, and this is the protocol for organogenesis of tobacco callus, where organogenesis means development of adventitious organs or primordia from undifferentiated cell mass. So first we have to select a tobacco plant, and from that 2 centimeter of internodal region has to be cut to be the X plant. And the surface sterilization is done by immersing it in 70% ethanol for 30 seconds and followed by a 15-minute incubation in sodium hypochlorite. Then the tissue is washed into several changes of sterile distilled water. Next, we have to take the explant into the petri dish and cut that into 2 pieces. And those pieces are inoculated in MS medium supplemented with certain amount of IAA, that is indole acetic acid, and kinetin hormone. And the culture is then incubated at 25 degrees centigrade, and 16 hours of photoperiod is taken for observation. This will help to create the callus tissue, which will something look like this, white or yellow in color. And this will take 2 weeks to form, and after 6 weeks, it should be subcultured in a fresh medium. Now, to stimulate organ development, the tobacco callus is transferred into a MS medium with different auxin cytokinin ratios. Shoot will develop if we put that into a MS medium with high cytokinin and low auxin level, and if we put that rootless shoot into a medium with high auxin and low cytokinin level, root will form, and that way we will get the tobacco plantlet. So this tobacco plantlet is possible to transplant into the soil, and no aseptic procedures are required to transplant. These plantlets are removed from the culture vessels, and carefully these are taken so that we don't damage any root or shoot system. The plantlets are carefully washed with tap water, and then these individual plantlets are transplanted into pot containing seedling compost, and the soil is watered regularly. The pot is covered with small inverted polythene bag to reduce transpiration. Small holes are made later on, and gradually the tobacco plantlet should be hardened off to allow it for the complete removal of the plastic. And now this can be grown to maturity in the greenhouse. So this is an experiment done in stevia plant where seed germination, and from that a shoot multiplication and root germination is occurring. These are some types of general plant tissue culture techniques, that are callus culture, protoplast culture, cell suspension culture, etc. Now come to the application part. Application of plant tissue cultures is vast. We can see there are many kind of applications, like from preparing synthetic seeds to preparing disease-free plant for large-scale multiplication, for cryopreservation. Everything can be done using plant tissue culture techniques. Now we come to micropropagation, which is a technique where a callus mass has been initiated from a single explant taken from any living part of a donor plant, and within that short time and space, a large number of plantlets can be produced from such callus tissue. As a result, a large number of plant species or varieties can be propagated all around the year, and the breeder or the grower are no longer restricted. So this is the micropropagation technique done in potato plant. Now we humans are not only dependent on plant for food, we are also dependent on plant for many other compounds, like for pigments, medicine, vitamins, flavoring agents, secondary metabolites, etc. So by culturing those target specific cells in suitable medium, we will get a large amount of secondary metabolites such as alkaloids, terpenoids, quinine, etc. So plant tissue culture techniques also helps in production of transgenic plant, that are genetically modified plant, where a foreign gene is incorporated via different methods like electroporation, microinjection, particle bombardment, gene transfer method, etc. And this plant will carry different traits like insect resistant, herbicide tolerance, increased amino acid content, increased vitamin content, etc. These are some commercial genetically modified crop we see in day-to-day life. And now the techniques of tissue culture are also applied to germplasm conservation so that we can preserve the endangered, rare, and extinct species. Also, maintenance of the primary cultivars and the wild relatives of crop plant with a pool of genetic resources is also done using tissue culture techniques. We know NPGBR, that is National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, is one of the finest institutions that is working in this germplasm field. So now we can conclude that the tissue culture therefore has a great significance in biological studies due to its wide range of application. The processes involved in the tissue culture may be complex, not so cost effective, and requiring a lot of care to avoid, such as contamination. So because of these complexities, in some steps, it may not be everyone's cup of tea. So I am ending my presentation on this note. I hereby want to thank our respected principal ma'am and the IQAC of our college for giving me this platform. I want to thank all my departmental teachers and batchmates for helping me with my presentation. And I want to thank our HOD ma'am and the entire botany department for putting up this event all together. Thank you, everyone. I'm stopping my presentation here.
Thank you very much, Rumeli. And before proceeding for the question answer part of this lecture, I would hereby like to invite our respected faculty member, Tenzing Noden Bhutia, to conduct the session. Thank you. Welcome, Tenzing ma'am.
Thank you, madam. So I'd like to conduct the question answer session for this webinar. So the first question to Rumeli is from Arnak Adak. It says, can we make artificial seed by using tissue culture method?
Yes, yes, thank you, ma'am, for the question, and thank you, Arnav, for the question. So yeah, we can make artificial seed. So artificial seed are not a same seed like zygotic seed. These are generally made up from somatic cells. So these living seed-like structures, which are made experimentally by tissue culture technique, where the somatic embryos derived from plant tissue culture techniques are encapsulated by a hydrogel, and such encapsulated embryos behave like true seeds if grown in soil and can be used as a substitute for natural seeds.
Okay, thank you, Rumeli. Arnab, I hope your confusion is cleared. Okay, our next question is from Professor Subhajit Bandyopadhyay. It says, what is totipotency?
Yes, thank you, sir. So totipotency is the genetic potential of a plant to produce the entire plant again. So in other words, we can say it is the cell characteristics in which the potential for forming all the cell types in the adult organism is retained.
Okay, thank you, Rumeli. Since there are no more questions for Rumeli, I'd like to proceed on with the session. So I'd like to call upon our next speaker, Swagata Naskar of semester 4. Swagata, please.
In the present world of competition, there is a rare of existence in which those are having will to come forward succeed. In the pandemic situation, presentation through online platform is like a bridge between theoretical and practical working. With this willing, I joined this webinar. So myself, Swagata Naskar, I am in SEM 4 ND College Botany Honors. I am going to deliver my lecture on the topic of forensic botany. I am trying my level best. Forensic botany. What is forensic botany? Forensic botany is the field of forensic science which deals with the scientific use of plant materials and group of diatoms in the investigation of criminal cases, legal questions, and disputes to ascertain the case of death for former location. It is also defined as the study of plant life in order to gain information regarding possible crime. Thus, plant materials found at the crime scene can often be successfully linked to the perpetrator. of the crime or can help to rule out a suspect in a crime. Just as fingerprints are unique in individual, and the plant materials is often unique to certain ecological areas and plant species. Some basic information. Father of forensic botany, Bernard Spilsberg. John Vokentuch is discovered the fingerprints. Father of fingerprints, Marcello Malpighi. Best forensic scientists are Dr. William Bose from US and Dr. Joseph Bell from Scotland. Best country of forensic studies are the US, UK, Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, etc. Best University of Forensic Studies are George Washington University, US and the University of Dundee, UK. History of forensic botany. In Plato's Phaedo, Socrates self-administered the death sentence of poison hemlock. And the following is an example of one of the earliest and famous cases in which botanical evidence was used and accepted in court. In 1932, in the evening of March 1st, the infant son of famous American hero Carlos Lindbergh was kidnapped from his home. For the release of the son, the family paid $50,000, but the kidnapper did not return their son. 2 months later, the dead body of the baby was discovered a few miles away from the family home. The kidnapper used only the homemade wooden ladders to gain the access. The ladder is the only evidence left at the scene. The xylotomist Arthur Koehler examined the wood of the ladder both morphologically and anatomically. 4 years later, when the case finally came to the trial, Koehler offered the evidence from plant anatomy which was ever to be heard and accepted in American court. Next, Koehler analyzed the ladder was made by yellow pine, Pinus ponderosa, Douglas pine, and the wood from Betular species. The progress of the case was very slow as no suspect was identified. Sometimes in September of 1934, a gas station received some currency note and it was detected that those were ones used to pay the ransom for the release of the infant son. Bruno Richard Hoffman, a carpenter from New York City, paid the notes to the gas station. The search was made at Hoffman house and the 14,000 of the ransom was found in the garage. So Hoffman was arrested. First forensic case in India. That is the Alvandar murder case is a murder trial which was conducted in Madras state in India in the early 1950s. The cause of the trial was the murder of a businessman and ex-serviceman named Alvandar whose headless body was found in one of the coaches of the Indo-Ceylon Express. Here is some vocabulary which are related to my topic, that is the forensic botany, forensic palynology, pollen grain and spore, pollen fingerprints, stamen and also the PMI. How pollen grains help in forensic cases? Traditionally, forensic palynology is done by examining the pollen grain under a microscope and comparing them to already known pollen morphology. Pollen can be classified by size, shape, color, and by features of their apertures and ornamentation. A sample of pollen from a crime scene can help to identify a specific plant species that may have had contact with the victim or not to evidence that does not ecologically belong to the area. How soil is used as evidence. Soil being a transferable physical component, it can be transferable from one location to another with the help of shoes, tires, cloths, tools, etc. Act as a tool of forensic investigation to correlate a specific crime scene with criminal suspect. Pollen fingerprints. Pollen grains make excellent forensic tools for a number of reasons. They are morphologically distinct, resistant to damage and also decay, produced in vast quantities and found on almost every surface. So a pollen grain is almost as useful as the fingerprint. PMI. The full form of PMI is the post-mortem interval. The time between death and finding a body is called the post-mortem interval. Determining the PMI is important because having a time frame can help with the identification of the human remains and contribute to investigate the possible causes of death. Botanical crime scene analysis method. The crime scene photographer should take image of 1. Dominant plants and other plants. 2. Depressed grasses indicating possible entrance or exist. Number 3. Broken branches or distributed plants. Number 4, plants that seem unusual for the area. And finally, number 5, the plants in usual locations relative to the body, vehicle, or object. Searching for and mapping the botanical evidences. Botanical evidence should be labeled with the following information, that is the number 1, description of the plant, number 2, height of the plant, and finally number 3, the color and shape of flowers, fruits, seeds, stems, and leaves. Botanical evidence collection. At least 10 different type of plants from the areas are assemblage called a habitat sample should be collected. Botanical evidence is best placed in paper, but in case of plants, it can be temporarily stored using a plant press. Why do we study forensic? Forensic scientists help authorities through the analysis of evidence collected from the crime scene. The results are then used to identify a suspect or determine if they committed a crime or not. Forensic science degrees teach students how to collect, store, and analyze all type of evidences. Importance of forensic botany. Although forensic botany is a newer science, it has been very beneficial in cases. It has been vital to cases and has been solved or at least helped to solve many crimes. It has brought justice to many people, and as technology advances, the field of forensic botany could become even more and more helpful. The scope of forensic botany in India. Given the crime rising in the nation and statistics going through the roof, the demand for professionals in the field is all the more required. From government labs to counselors to investigations, the nation is in a dire need of forensic experts. The steps required to obtain a career in forensic botany are as follows. Firstly, earn an associate degree, then earn a bachelor degree, then narrow down a specialty. After that, earn the master's or doctorate degree if applicable. It is if applicable, complete degree requirements. Then engage in on the job training and finally earn the certification. I would like to express my special thanks of gratitude to our principal ma'am who gave me the golden opportunity to explain my presentation in this webinar platform despite our busy schedule. I would like to thank my department who have helped me to put these ideas well above the level of simplicity and into something concrete. And I also would like to thank them for giving me the opportunity to do this wonderful presentation on the topic of forensic botany, which also helped me in doing a lot of research and I came to know about so many new things. I am really thankful to them. They gave me the different ideas in making this presentation. Any attempt at any level can't be satisfactorily completed without the support and guidance of my parents, seniors, and also the friends. I would like to thank them who helped me a lot in gathering different information, collecting data, and guiding me from time to time in making this presentation. Thank you. That's all for today. I stop my presentation. Over to TNB ma'am.
We thank you, Swagata, for your wonderful presentation. So proceeding with the questions, there are, I think, 4 questions, but I'd like to take only 2 because of the time constraint. So the first question is from Puli Khandra. It says, what is Plato's Phaedo?
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Pili, for the question. The Phaedo is one of the most widely read dialogues written by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. It claims to recount the events and conversation that occurred on that day that Plato's teacher Socrates was put to the death by state of Athens.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question to you is from Pratyusha Singha. It says, how can diatom help in crime?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Pratyusha. It's a good question. Diatoms have been used in forensic science in a variety of ways, the most frequent being the diagnosis of death by drowning. When a person drowns, water will enter the lungs and then enter the bloodstream through the ruptures in the peripheral alveoli. Before being carried to the other organs such as the liver and heart. Naturally, the microscopic contents of the water which will include diatoms will pass into the blood as well. The detection of these diatoms in the organs can contribute a diagnosis of death by drawing. The process referred to as the diatom test. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Shwagata. So now I'd like to call upon our next speaker, Ritu Panchal from semester 6. Ritu, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, respected teachers and my dear fellows. This is Ritu Panchal here. So today I will be speaking on the topic of DNA replication. I am going to share my screen now. Please let me know if it's not visible. So, what is DNA replication? So, DNA replication is the process by which a cell copies its DNA. Now, replication is necessary so that the genetic information that are present in the cells could be passed on to the daughter cells following cell division. Now, basically, DNA replication is semi-conservative in nature. That means when DNA is replicated, one of the DNA strand of the daughter molecule is conserved as the parental strand, while the other complementary strand will be newly synthesized one. So this is a picture of semi-conservative replication model. Now, if we look here, the daughter molecule that is formed possesses one of the newly strand, which is blue in color, this one, and the other strand is the parental strand, which is purple in color. So that's how the information is passed on to the next generation. Now, like any other biological process, DNA replication in general consisted of three main steps: initiation, elongation, and termination. Now, I will be discussing about the DNA replication in prokaryotes. So, if we consider a bacterial cell, DNA replication in bacteria initiate at ODC region. Also, bacterial replication initiate at the bacterial replication is bidirectional in nature. Now, here are the enzymes that are required for prokaryotic replication. So, they are DNA polymerase 1, DNA polymerase 3, DNA polymerase 2, helicase primase, etc. Now, let us know about the activities of this mentioned enzyme in detail. So, for better understanding about the activities of DNA polymerases, we must know what is exonuclease activity and why is it required. Now, exonuclease activity of the enzymes allow the incorrect base pair to be excised. Now, this particular activity is essential because it could lower the error rate during DNA replication. Now, DNA polymerase 1 has the potentiality to possess this exonuclease activity both in 3 to 5 prime direction as well as 5 to 3 prime direction, while DNA polymerase 2 and DNA polymerase 3 could only possess this exonuclease activity in 3 to 5 prime direction. Now, DNA polymerase 3 is a hollow enzyme consisted of several subunits that are listed here. So, this is a picture of DNA polymerase 3 hollow enzyme. Now, other than DNA polymerases, enzymes like helicase primase, gyrase, and also protein like single-strand binding protein are needed for prokaryotic replication. Now, DNA helicase helps in unwinding double-coiled DNA, breaking the hydrogen bond. Then DNA primase will form the RNA primer, a short sequence of RNA that are essentially needed in order to start the DNA synthesis process. Now, DNA gyrase will prevent the supercoiling of DNA while unwinding, and single-strand binding protein will prevent rewinding of DNA. Now, synthesis of DNA by DNA polymerases occur only in the 5 prime to 3 prime direction. Now, after the DNA unwind, one of the strand will be known as the leading template strand, and the DNAs that are copied on the leading strand will be continuous in manner, while the other strand formed will be known as the lagging strand, and the DNAs that are synthesized on the lagging strand will be discontinuous in manner, rather will be in the form of fragments known as Okazaki fragments. Now let us understand the prokaryotic replication mechanism in detail. So what happened? Firstly, the double helical structure of DNA will be unwinded into two separate strands. The unzipping of this DNA will be done by helicase enzyme. Now as the DNA open up, a Y-shaped structure will be formed known as replication fork. As we can see, replication fork is formed here. Now, this replication fork along with specialized proteins such as RNA primer, etc. will form a bubble-like structure known as DNA bubble. So this is a picture of DNA bubble. Now, with the formation of primer RNA by primase and attachment of DNA polymerase 3, the initiation process is completed. Then it will move into the elongation phase. So elongation of prokaryotic DNA involves with the movement of dimer of DNA polymerase 3 towards the fork end. DNA polymerase 3 will add DNA nucleotides to the 3' end of the newly synthesized polynucleotide strand. Not only that, they will also not only that, the Okazaki fragments will also be joined by the enzyme DNA polymerase 1, which will remove the RNA primer by its exonuclease activity and will synthesize the DNA strand on that gap from 5' to 3'. Finally, what will happen? DNA ligase will join the fragments, fragment of DNA, like the Okazaki fragment, so that the newly synthesized DNA strand could become continuous. So this is a picture of like elongation process. After that, it will proceed towards the DNA termination. So once the DNAs are synthesized, the DNA replication will be terminated by pausing the growing bidirectional replication fork. So this will mark the end of the prokaryotic replication. Now I will be discussing about the eukaryotic DNA replication. So eukaryotic DNA replication will initiate at ARS sequence. Now eukaryotic DNA replications occur in the nucleus. So eukaryotic DNA replication shares many features with replication in bacteria. However, here the process is more complicated due to the presence of linear eukaryotic chromosome. So before unwinding the double helical structure, several complexes are needed to be formed for DNA replication in eukaryotes. Those will be formed during cell cycle. So I will be discussing about the complexes that are formed during cell cycle for eukaryotic replication. So what happened at G1 phase, 6 protein molecules will form a complex known as origin replication recognition complex. After that, at S phase, 6 protein molecules will form a complex and will bind at this origin replication recognition complex region. And that complex formed will be known as pre-replication complex. Finally, cyclin-dependent kinases will activate this pre-replication complex and will inhibit the formation of further pre-replication complexes. So after this formation of all those complexes, the unwinding of the DNA will take place. So here are some enzymes that are involved in eukaryotic replication. I have listed here. So after initiation process, it will move towards the elongation phase. Now, eukaryotic elongation is quite similar to that of prokaryotic. So I'm not going in detail about the eukaryotic elongation. So directly I'm going to the termination of eukaryotic replication. So termination is quite complicated in eukaryotes and takes place at the telomeric region. Now termination is carried out by the enzyme telomerase. Now what happens? The extreme 5' end of the lagging strand in linear DNA cannot be replicated since there is no room for a RNA primer to initiate replication. So that creates a shortening of chromosome. So in order to avoid this problem, telomerase enzyme is useful so that it could be the process could be done with an ease. So that's how termination is completed. So that's all about DNA replication. I have tried to represent my presentation in a very, very short manner. So yeah, I'm ending my presentation on this note. And I want to acknowledge our principal madam, our IQAC coordinator sir, and our departmental teachers for giving me this opportunity to represent myself here on this event. I also want to thank my departmental teachers and my fellow batchmen for helping me to get through this presentation throughout. So yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Ritu, for your wonderful presentation. Okay, so the first question to you is from Pratyusha Singha. It says, what is Okazaki fragment?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Pratyusha, for your question. So, Okazaki fragments are actually the short sequences of DNA that are synthesized on the lagging strand during the DNA replication. Now, since they are discontinuous in manner, so this Okazaki fragments could be made continuous, could be made continuous by the DNA ligase enzyme. So, yeah.
Okay, the second question to you is from Tanu Majumdar. It says, how does the nucleic acid replicate in case of virus?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Tonu, for your question. So, yeah, viral replication is it's like quite different from other replication. It actually takes place inside the host cell. So what happens, they enter into the host cell and will use the host machinery and metabolism of a host cell to produce number of copies of themselves. Then what they will do, they will come out of the host cell by destruction by destructing the cell. Also we have to keep in mind whether the virus is DNA or RNA. So, for instance, if the virus is DNA, then it will combine within the host chromosome and will replicate through the host machinery. But if the virus is RNA virus, then positive sense RNA strand must be converted to double-stranded DNA via reverse transcriptase. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Ritu. Okay, now moving on to our last speaker for today, Vishwadeep Karak from semester 4. Vishwadeep, over to you.
Good afternoon, respected principal madam, teachers, and my friends. Myself, Vishwadeep Karak. I am fourth sem botany honor student of our ND college. I am going to deliver my lecture on the topic double fertilization. I have already presented my slide. Is it visible?
Yes, Vishwadeep.
Okay, then let's start. Double fertilization is a complex mechanism that has evolved in angiosperms, which leads to the formation of seeds. Seeds are very important as it gives rise to new plants. The process involves the joining of a female gametophyte with two male gametes. This is the diagram of a flower showing all the four holes: calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. In the left picture, ovules are present inside the ovary, which are the part of carpel, and in the right picture, pollen grains are present inside the anther, which are the part of stamen. Before knowing about the fertilization process, we are going to know how male gametophyte pollen grain and female gametophyte embryo sac develop. The formation of pollen grain is known as microsporogenesis. In the first picture, we can see TS of young anther, where mass of undifferentiated cell is present, and the anther is newly formed. After that, cytoplasm of some of those cells become prominent. Now, those cells are called archisporial cell. This cell periclinally divides to form primary parietal cell below epidermis and primary sporogenous cell towards the center. Primary parietal cell divides anticlinally and periclinally to form endothecium, middle layer, and tapetum. On the other side, primary sporogenous cell forms sporogenous cell after 2 or more mitotic division. Then sporogenous cell forms microspore mother cell after differentiating itself. Then meiosis occurs, as we all know, and 4 haploid pollen grains are formed from microspore mother cell. This is the flow chart of the process I have just mentioned. Then microgametogenesis occurs. This process is all about development of male gametophyte. Here we are going to know the story of pollen grain before pollination, pre-pollination changes. In picture A, B, C, we can see the nucleus of pollen grain divide by unequal mitotic division and form a large vegetative cell or tube cell and a smaller cell known as generative cell. Generative cell divides and form 2 male gametes. Pollination of pollen grains takes place in bicelled and binucleated stage in 60% of angiosperms, and 40% pollination occurred at 3-celled stage. In picture D, E, F, G, we can see post-pollination changes. We are going to know about this in fertilization section. The formation of megaspore mother cell is known as megasporogenesis. The ovule develops as multinuclear placental outgrowth, including the epidermal and a number of hypodermal cells. One hypodermal cell of the nucellus becomes differentiated from the other by its bigger size, dense cytoplasm, and prominent nucleus. It is called primary archisporial cell. The archisporial cell divides transversely and forms an inner primary parietal cell. It undergoes repeated vertical divisions and forms layers of parietal cells. And the primary sporogenous cell functions as megaspore mother cell. This diploid megaspore mother cell undergoes meiosis and form 4 haploid megaspore. They are arranged in axial row called linear tetrad. Out of these 4 megaspore, 3 micropylar megaspore degenerates and the chalazal one behaves as functional megaspore. Then the development of embryo sac occurs in megagametogenesis. The nuclei of functional megaspore divides 4 times mitotically and form 8 nucleated structure. Out of them, 4 remain towards the micropylar end and the other 4 towards the chalazal end. One nucleus from each pole then moves towards the center and forms a pair of polar nuclei, which fuse together and form diploid definitive nucleus. It is also known as polar fusion nuclei or secondary nucleus. The 3 nuclei of micropylar end form the egg apparatus, and the rest 3 at the chalazal end are called antibodal cells. In egg apparatus, each nucleus is surrounded by viscous mass of cytoplasm without any wall, of which middle one is largest and called egg ovum or oosphere. And the rest 2 are synergids or helping cell. This type of embryo sac development is very common in angiosperms and is known as normal type or polygonum type. It is also known as monosporic type because out of 4 megaspore, only 1 remains functional and forms an embryo sac. Then the pollination takes place where the pollen grains are transferred from the anthers to the stigma of the same flower or to the another flower. Dehiscence of anther is the prerequisite for pollination. Once the anther is dehisced, the pollination can occur through the agencies of water, air, and insects. It is of 2 types: self-pollination, cross-pollination. The fusion of male gamete and female gamete is called fertilization. The fertilization was first discovered by Strasburger in 1884 in Monotropa plant. Now I am going to tell you all the post-pollination changes. Germination of pollen grains. After pollination, pollen grains germinate by absorbing moisture and sugar content, form stigma and swells up. Then the intine of pollen grain grows out through the germinal pore of exine. in the form of tube-like outgrowth. It is called pollen tube. After germination, the pollen grain grows through the style and reaches the ovary. Then the pollen tube enters inside the ovule by 3 different pathways, and these are as follows. First is porogamy. The entry of pollen tube into the ovule takes place through the micropyle, as shown in picture A. Second one is chalazogamy. Number B in picture. The entry of pollen tube takes place through the chalaza. In picture C, we can see mesogamy, where pollen tube enters the ovule through the integuments. Irrespective of the place of entry into the ovule, the pollen tube always entered into the embryo sac through the micropylar region. It may enter the embryo sac, that is one of the following routes, between one synergid and the egg, or between one synergid and the wall of embryo sac, or directly into one synergid, thereby it is being destroyed. After that, movement of sperms toward the egg and polar nuclei takes place. Now I come to the main topic of today, double fertilization. It is the fusion of two male gametes brought by a pollen tube to the different cells of the same female gametophyte in order to produce two different structures. This process is discovered by Namaste in 1898 in Fritillaria and Lilium plant. In this process, after releasing the male gametes, one of them fuses with egg and form diploid embryo. This process is known as syngamy. On the other hand, the second male gamete fuses with the diploid secondary nucleus to form triploid endosperm. This process is known as triple fusion. Because the secondary nucleus itself is a fusion of two polar nucleus. Here two fusion takes place, that is syngamy and triple fusion. So this process is known as double fertilization. Significance of double fertilization is as follows. It gives stimulus to the plant, due to which ovary develops into fruit and ovules develop into seeds. It restores the diploid condition by fusion of haploid male and female gametes. It results in the formation of diploid zygote, which develops into an embryo and gives rise to a new plant. It results in the formation of triploid primary endosperm nucleus, which develops into endosperm in the seed. It provides nourishment to the developing embryo. It brings about recombination of characters resulting in variation among the offspring. These are some references from where I have collected all the informations. I would like to express my deep gratitude and thanks to Principal Madam and my teachers who gave me this golden opportunity to present my paper in this seminar. Last but not the least, I would also like to thank my parents and friends who helped me a lot in finalizing this. That's all. I am stopping my presentation. Over to TNV Madam.
Okay, thank you, Bishwadev. Okay, the questions to you are, okay, so Rubina Khatun and Ankush Adak, they have asked the same question. What is the difference between periclinal and anticlinal division?
Okay, thank you, Madam. Thank you, Rubina and Ankush. Periclinal cell division occur parallel to the tissue or organ surface. As a result, we get rows of cells stacked one over the another. On other side, anticlinal cell division are perpendicular to the adjacent layer of cells. Therefore, these division work at right angles to the surface.
Okay, thank you, Bishwadev. Okay, the next question is by Pritam Banerjee. What is the difference between pollen and microspore?
Thank you, ma'am, madam, and Pritam. This is an interesting question. Microspores occur in seedless vascular plants such as ferns and spike mosses, and pollen grain occur in seed plants. There are so many differences, but I'm going to tell the key difference between them. Actually, the microspore is a small pore that develops into the male gametophyte in plants, while pollen grain is the small grain that contains the male gametophyte.
Okay, thank you, Bishwadeep. Okay, now proceeding further, I'd like to hand over the session to our head ma'am, Professor Pampa Chakravarti. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Tenzing ma'am. Actually, now I request our respected coordinator of Internal Quality Assessment Cell or IQAC of the college, Dr. Kuntal Chattopadhyay sir, who is now present with us to share his vision. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pompa madam. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You are audible, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, I do apologize for being late because I had a class. Therefore, I entered a bit late and I got a chance to listen to a part of your event. 3 papers I had an opportunity to listen to, and I must appreciate that young presenters, the budding scholars, they have really put up a great show. Very innovative, very wonderful articulate presentations on their part. And I must also congratulate the department standing behind them, encouraging them. And for our college, this is one of our many efforts we are putting up here and there to keep this initiative rolling, although this is a different kind of a time, but still we should keep ourselves rolling, moving on. So thank you very much for organizing this event, for bringing in so many young learners and presenting so wonderfully. I must congratulate the presenters and the teachers, the faculties. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, on behalf of the students to encourage them. Now our session is on the verge of its completion. Actually, to make the event a success, on behalf of the botany department, I would like to thank our principal madam, Dr. Shoma Bandopadhyay, for providing a platform for the students in this webinar. And thanks are due to the coordinator, sir, of IQAC, Dr. Kuntal Chattopadhyay, along with his team, with all members of the IQAC. And I wish to express the gratitude to all the faculty members and students for their active support to make this event successful. And last but not the least, our heartfelt thanks are due to Hello, am I audible, sir?
Now you're audible.
Yes, madam.
Yes, now our session is on the verge of its completion. To make this event a success, on behalf of the Department of Botany, I would like to thank our principal ma'am, Dr. Shoma Bandopadhyay, for providing the platform to the student for this webinar. And thanks are due to our coordinator, sir, of IQAC, Dr. Kuntal Chattopadhyay, along with his team of all IQAC members. And I wish to express the gratitude to all the faculty members and all the students of Botany Department for their active support. At last but not the least, our heartfelt thanks are due to the technical team of our college for providing valuable support to make the event successful. Thank you, sir. Thank you all to make the event complete one. I think this by this note we have come to an end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.